Hi there, Steve Coffin here. Hi all you language learners. Remember, if you enjoy these videos, please subscribe to my channel. Today I want to talk about something that many of you are probably aware of, but I want to kind of share my views on this. The influence of the internet on language learning and how it has already dramatically changed language learning and how it's going to continue to change language learning. And what triggered this was an exchange on my blog, The Linguist on Language, where I mentioned the fact that in universities, I was told by the head of a language department here at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, that there's a very rapid drop-off in students who enroll particularly in difficult languages, that after 1 or 2 years, the enrollment drops to a fraction of what it was for the first 2 years. So by the third or fourth year, there are very few people in language class, which presents a real problem for universities. It's difficult for them to justify these classes and so forth and so on. And I said that maybe, and then I also pointed out the fact that in these difficult languages, in many cases, for example, in Russian, even in Ivy League schools, in the third or fourth year, they are reading Russian literature in translation, not in the original. And so I suggested maybe the focus should be on comprehension rather than trying to produce the language, which doesn't seem to do much good for most of the students. Anyway, so someone said, well, yeah, but if you push people to read literature, they're going to be even less interested. And of course, that is true. And I think this gets back to one of Krashen's points, and that is, successful language learning relies on compelling input. And if you force students to read, the canons of Russian literature, Dostoevsky or whatever it might be, that's fine if the student is interested in Dostoevsky. But if the student is not interested, then that's actually counterproductive. So then I thought to myself, well, in today's day and age, really, why would we force the students to learn or to read specific content matter? So I looked at what the internet offers today. First of all, there's a tremendous range of content. It used to be, if you went to a language class, the teacher was the only source of information on how the language works, the only source of potential reading material or listening material, whereas today, any successful language learner has to be searching for these things himself or herself. So I would see, if I look here, I've got my computer, my MacBook, I've got my little iPod Nano, and I've got my iPad. And of course, I'm using my iPhone, which I also use for language learning, but I'm using it to film the video. So these are the tools that we have. So, if we had a language class based on how the internet makes things more accessible to everyone, where the teacher is no longer the source of wisdom and content, but simply a guide. So if I were running a class, I would say, let's say, whatever the language is, I would say, initially, day one, here are some of the issues in the language. In Japanese, they have these particles, whatever they are called, watashi wa anata ni sore o agemasu. So these are some of the issues you're going to encounter in the language. Or if it's a Romance language, that the verbs change for person, for tense, and so forth and so on. And so then I would say, now here's a list of beginner material that you can read and listen to, and I would, quite frankly, direct them to link, because there they can look the words up and they can say phrases. Go off and struggle through these, and then we'll come back into class and you bring in the phrases, which they can save, and we'll go over some of the phrases. So I explained in general terms what to expect in the language. They then go to discover the language, find that they can't understand, and even if they look up the words, they can't make sense of it. So we discuss some of these phrases in class and then send them back to do more reading and listening. So this is sort of in the initial period where the content they would use would basically be limited to short, easy material. And then at a later stage, I would encourage students to go and find whatever is of interest to them and suggest here are some potential sources. So if you're interested in history, in politics, in music, in art, in literature, whatever it is, go off and find it. And then, I would encourage, we can go over certain aspects of the grammar in class, but of course these things don't necessarily stick. And so then I would encourage people, if you want to know how to conjugate a certain verb, if you want to get some more background on the use of particles in Japanese, Google for it. And then if you have any questions, bring them to class, so that the teacher would be encouraging the students to find information about the language wherever they can find it, and we can discuss it in class. Encouraging to find content of interest and then read and listen to it on your own and bring phrases that cause you difficulty to class. And rather than having everyone read aloud in class, and I would even encourage them to say, all right, in the classroom there's 20 of us, so we can't all be speaking together. Sign up at italki or at Link or wherever you want and get on with a native speaker. And then because the tutor typically provides a list of phrases that cause you difficulty in the conversation, bring those to class and we'll discuss them. And if there are patterns in the language that cause difficulty for learner A, typically they also cause difficulty for other learners. So these can be discussed in the classroom. So I mean, that's just a very quick sketch of a subject that needs to be researched, but surely the fact that there is so much help available online, help in terms of online native speakers, help in terms of interesting content, help in terms of explanations of the grammar, and so forth and so on, that the role of the teacher as the sort of source of all wisdom about the language is obsolete. And so getting back to my discussion at my blog, this commenter said, you know, how can you have a situation where people read what they want? Doesn't everyone have to be reading the same book in the classroom? Well, that's the way it's been up until now. But I can foresee a situation where people bring whatever they've been reading to class, whatever problems they've been reading to class, and this becomes a subject of discussion in the classroom, initially using the language of the learner and gradually moving into more and more using the target language. So that's just to kind of get a discussion going on how the internet has changed language learning, and I look forward to your comments. Bye for now.